In early July, the European Parliament voted in fact for the inclusion of nuclear energy and natural gas in the taxonomy, that is, for their recognition as green and sustainable technologies for the energy transition to clean energy, albeit with a number of restrictions. Inclusion in the taxonomy essentially gives the green light to investments in these technologies, as these investments will meet the European criteria for sustainable development. This, in my opinion, is a favorable decision around which spears have been breaking for years. I will briefly explain my attitude toward the decision in 3 points. First, it is bad that the gas and the atom are combined into one solution. Gas is not green, but at the same time, it is the cleanest of fossil fuels, about twice as cleaner than coal in terms of emissions. Replacing coal with gas can reduce emissions, and as such, it is a good transitional and temporary solution. Although taking into account the prices for it in Europe, there will most likely be a temporary reverse effect. But this has little to do with taxonomy. Second, nuclear power is already Europe's largest clean and low-carbon source. One provides about 25% of all electricity in the European Union and about 40% of all low-carbon energy in Europe. At the same time, the taxonomy is not about investments in old nuclear power plants, but about investments in new projects with a number of restrictions that will stimulate investments in new nuclear technologies, more efficient, safer, and long overdue, reactors of generation 3+ and higher, small modular reactors, new types of fuel in the organization of sites for the disposal of high-level waste. Adding the atom to the taxonomy, which already has wind and solar energy, is logical and correct because different sources are needed to reduce emissions and increase energy security, and not just renewable ones. Thirdly, looking at the arguments of many opponents of the inclusion of gas and the atom in the taxonomy, one argument can be identified that seems to be false. Some opponents, such as Greenpeace, say that such a decision will play into the hands of Russia as a supplier of gas and nuclear fuel to Europe. In my opinion, this is not a question of taxonomy, but a question of sanctions. And this is perfectly illustrated by the position of Ukraine itself, which is more interested in weakening Russia than others, but the day before it advocated the inclusion of atom and gas in the taxonomy. This is not surprising, because Ukraine has the largest gas storage facilities in Europe and receives more than half of its electricity from nuclear power plants. And he is going to build new nuclear power plants. The curiosity is that despite the pro-nuclear and pro-gas position of Ukraine, Greenpeace protests against the inclusion of the atom and gas in the taxonomy with the flags of Ukraine. So, in general, the decision is not only historical but also quite positive. It is difficult to rely solely on the sun and wind for energy transition. A combination of all available low-carbon solutions is needed. Now in Europe there will be a wider choice of such solutions, and then it's up to investors. It is too early to talk about the nuclear renaissance, but if the decision is not dragged through the courts, then the development of the atom in Europe will nevertheless go more vigorously. In the meantime, you can watch other videos on the channel. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.